Pedro, I'll start by just asking you to tell us how this came about. There's been talk of you doing an English language feature for some years, and you sort of tested the waters by making a couple of short films in English, both of which we showed, one of which was with Tilda. And I'm wondering what made you decide on, why was this the project, this Sigrid Nunez book, that inspired you to make your first English language feature?
Yeah, well, actually, I read the book of Sigrid Nunez, and I also read before, I knew her before, with the novel called A Friend, about that. It's also became a movie with Naomi Watts, and I was hooked about one situation, not the whole book, because Sigrid narrates in a way like it's going like that, and everything that happens is she meets in the street, and she meets the neighbors, she meets cats, and she talks about the cats. I mean, it's very difficult to adapt that to one script. So I made the choice of when the protagonist, Julianne Moore, I put also the name Ingrid because Sigrid didn't give a name to them, and also she didn't give a name to the places. I decided to happen in New York, and where I was hooked is that this lady that is very busy suddenly knows that one of her best friends of the past is very ill and is in the hospital. So she went to see her. And immediately she discovered that the ill one, I mean, Tilda Swinton, needs to talk. And the Ingrid realized that she's the one to be there listening to her. Even she's very busy. That was the beginning. And well, the second sequence, or second chapter that I was very interested, it was when Tilda, decides to make a proposition here, very close to us, in the Alice Tully. And that was the 2 points that I wanted to develop. And once I was writing the adaptation, I didn't know if that was enough to make a long feature. But I never read again the book, because then it was just the script. What decide was what I was going to say after. So that was the origin.
Since you brought up that scene, I was going to ask you why you decided to set it in the lobby of Alice Tully Hall.
Well, many reasons. One is a tribute to you, because you were very generous to me. My whole career, this is really, I feel here like at home. And if there is a movie that is not coming here, I will be very miserable. I will feel very unhappy. And also because I didn't want to make a tourist movie, because New York is so beautiful to shoot that sometimes I was avoiding to make a wonderful view of, but from this corner in Alice Tully, that big wall, big window, you can see Columbus Circus, and also you can see these paintings, these pop paintings on the wall, just in front of on the right side. That I think it was perfect to say, we are in the heart of New York. And also the idea was that they came to see a trip to Italy, Viaggio to Italia, by Rossellini. That is one of my favorite movies. And also, it was very moving and I think we recorded that part, because also Sigrid came. Sigrid was very, very interested looking at them, selling, because that part of the dialogue belongs to Sigrid, and she was very moved. She was the whole day with us, and also, just for me, it was, I have so many memories that all then were accompany me in that moment. And also, as I tell you, it was a way for me to say thank you so much.
Thank you. I wanted to bring in your amazing actors, and maybe you can talk about both Tilda and Julianne, because I think this is a film that's so much about female friendship, and it's not just about each one of them. I think we know that Tilda and Julianne are both extraordinary actors in their own right, but there's something really beautiful about how they work together in this film. And I was wondering it's a duet, and I'm just wondering how you thought of putting them together, because it's that connection, how they look together, how they look at each other, how they are with each other is so important throughout the film.
La pregunta solo. Well, because I love them as actresses, and I also worked before with Tilda, and we became very close friends. And also, there was an immediate chemistry between Tilda and I. Fortunately, the first time that they see each other, they were like an epiphany for them. Since that moment, they start talking, and they keep on talking during 5 months. There was a moment that I went to them and they say, there is any subject that you didn't touch, because they were talking all the time, which means that they became, and there was an immediate chemistry between the two. And also, I choose them because physically they are very different. Also, the characters are very different. Pero en cualquier caso son dos mujeres valientes.
But in any case, they're two very courageous women.
Cada una a su modo.
Each one in their own way.
Tilda se ha enfrentado a la muerte muchas veces.
Tilda has faced death many times.
Por su profesión como reportera de guerra.
Because she is a war correspondent.
Y Julianne es muy inmadura con respecto a la mortalidad.
And Julianne's character is very mature as regards mortality.
Entonces escribe relatos de autoficción acerca de este tema.
So she writes self-fiction about this very topic.
Entonces, que Tilda le haga la proposición de acompañarla en las últimas semanas para Ingrid es una gran aventura.
So that the fact that Tilda asks her to accompany her for these last few weeks of her life is really a great adventure for her.
Ella en el fondo también es una aventurera como Martha.
Because in the end, she's also an adventurous, someone adventurous like Martha.
Cuando te decides por un casting, lo haces a base de intuición.
And when you decide to cast people, you do it based on intuition.
No hay una forma, como te diría, exacta de decidirte. Lo haces por intuición.
Yeah, there's no precise science. You do it by intuition.
Pero mi intuición funcionó muy bien en este caso.
But my intuition worked very well.
Because it is very important that they became very close friends, because that friendship, it is in the screen, and also the movie, talks about mortality, but also talks about the empathy of someone to be close to someone, because sometimes this is the best you can do for a friend. Even without talking, you don't need to talk. Probably what you need is just to know how to listen. And that is the more difficult part of Julianne's character, and I think only the great actresses knows how to listen, and the spectator can see in their eyes what the other character is saying. So, I got the intuition that Julianne was perfect for that, and really, she was perfect for that. And also Tilda has this kind of, body that looks like, these bones here. I feel so envious of the face. And also of their nature. And I was telling them, in the 2 weeks or 3 weeks I don't know how, that we were in Venice, and I gained 3 pounds, and they are the same. They don't gain any weight. So it's a privilege. So Tilda always reminds me like someone from other dimension, that it was also perfect for this courageous women that also can talk about war, can talk about death, can talk about loneliness, can talk about everything that is losing with the illness, and with this kind of dignity, and also celebrating everything, every small detail of the daytime. So, thank you, girls, and thank you, John, because also I wanted someone that was before with the two of them. So John, it was also the perfect person to have an affair, a big affair with Tilda and with Julianne. And thank you. Thank you, John.
I'd love to hear you all talk about your response to the material and working together. Tilda, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, I had the privilege to have worked with Pedro before on the human voice. And I'm trying to remember some exotic story, but there isn't one. He just sent me an email with this script. And then, importantly, we had a conversation about, well, it wasn't even a conversation, it was a question. Who could be Ingrid? And I remember this moment of trepidation, because I had a name in my head immediately. I had a face in my eyes, and I thought, I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to be honest with Pedro, and what if he says another name, or if he gives another list? And so I pressed send, and he had sent the identical name back to me, so our emails crossed. That was a very important thing. I mean, because the film is so much about this complicity, and in many ways, I think of Ingrid and Martha as being one performance, in a way, one person. There's such a transference between them. So this complicity was so crucial to the project. I mean, if we hadn't found it, I don't quite know how we could have made the film. But my response was immediate and so grateful, because not only was I wanting to work with Pedro again, not only because I worship his cinema, but because seeing him every day is such a pleasure, and that's what life's about for me. But the film is about something. It's sort of the next level of his work, I believe. It's about, as usual, not looking away, and it's about fellowship. And it was important that those of us who made it were swimming in that water. And so finding these colleagues was everything.
Julianne?
Yes, for me too. It was just, yes. It was just an email. It was an email out of the blue from Pedro saying that he was making this movie with Tilda and he would like me to join them. And I was absolutely astonished, really flabbergasted, and I thought, it's like I opened it up, shut it, opened it up again, it was still there. I had been such an admirer of his for such a long time, and of Tilda's as well, so it was an incredible gift. And I think it's so interesting. I think about what the nature of the human condition is sometimes solipsistic. You don't know if you exist. You're always like, could I be imagining all of this? Am I completely alone? And I think the only way that you know that you're not alone is when someone else is witnessing you. And so that's what's so profound about this film, and about what Tilda said about the fellowship too, is that all these people gather together to make something, to prove that we're not alone, to prove that we lived. And I think that experience. And so often, I think that's one of what Pedro's movies are about. How do you witness the human condition in all of its kind of humor and fallibility and depth, and that's what this was. It was that wonderful experience of witnessing someone else's humanity.
John, I wanted to bring you in as well. We were just talking outside, and you told me that you've known Pedro for decades, which I didn't know. And I'd love to hear how the two of you became friends, and I'd also love to hear you talk a bit about that I think really critical scene at the end, that speech, that rant that you know with the conversation you're having with Julianne's character, which I think sums up so much of what the film is wrestling with about how we live in the face of death.
Yeah, well, I know Pedro since 1992. I think we met in Cannes, and we've been friendly since then. And many times he tries out. He tells me what he's writing when I've met him, and he acts out sometimes the movies that he's going to make, and which I've enjoyed tremendously. I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm a big fan of both of Tilda and Julianne. Julianne I've worked with before, and I thought it would be, it's kind of great to be able to support two great actresses in a film. So when Pedro asked me, I basically would have done anything he wanted me to do, just to get to work together. And I do think the film passes the smell test when it comes to how you navigate this part of life, which we all have to do. And I actually received the script right after going through something that was, a big loss in my life. And so it was really fortuitous. And I thought it was so sensitively done that I wanted, to be a part of it. And as far as that speech goes, it was much longer, but Pedro had to cut it down because he said the film was running long. But I understood, and I think we all live with the guilt of traveling and what do we do? Are we complicit in the warming of the planet and where the planet is going? And so it was very unusual to get to actually say something like that, even though it wasn't the most sensitive thing to say to Julianne at the time. So anyway, it was a privilege, to be a part of the film for me.
But it was very important what he said. I mean, that small monologue in the restaurant, it was, it's a big message for this country. El hecho de que hable de una situación tan cercana al ciudadano americano como el hecho que vayan unidas la ultraderecha con el neoliberalismo y que hable de ello como una catástrofe es muy importante, sobre todo en estos momentos además que estáis en elecciones.
So this is really a very important topic to think about, particularly for American citizens, because part of what he's talking about is how neoliberalism is going hand in hand with the far right. And right now in particular, right, as the US is in the midst of these elections.
Y sí, resulta un poco antipático hablar de una especie de apocalipsis junto a una mujer a la cual todavía le gusta mucho y que está viviendo su personal apocalipsis.
And, it's maybe bad taste that he's talking about the apocalypse in front of a woman who he's still attracted to, and also a woman who's going through something similar to an apocalypse.
Pero no solo el mensaje de él es muy importante, políticamente hablando, pero también le da al personaje de Julianne la oportunidad de enseñarle cómo uno puede vivir en esa situación. O sea, por supuesto, ella dice, es doloroso. Yo estoy viviendo con una mujer que me la voy a encontrar muerta en cualquier momento, pero he aprendido con ella a celebrar cada minuto del día con el mismo entusiasmo que ella lo hace. Es muy importante, para mí esa conversación es esencial.
So for me, it's really an essential conversation that happens because even though, of course, it's painful for Julianne's character to hear this, she also learns something from that conversation, and she learns a way to sort of stand beside the pain and beside the reality that she's having to face in a way that she's still celebrating life. And for this reason, that conversation is critical.
Entonces, digamos que el papel de John cumple la misma función que cumple el de Ingrid con Martha. O sea, él la va a ayudar a los pequeños detalles, como buscar un abogado, estar con ella. Es que la película habla realmente de la empatía, que es algo de lo que estamos muy necesitados en este momento de nuestra vida en todo el mundo. Es algo universal, desgraciadamente.
Yeah, and so really what the film is talking about is empathy, which is something that we're really needing at this point in time. And really what John is giving Ingrid is the same thing that Ingrid is giving Martha, which is just a way to be with each other, empathize with each other, and give each other, the human warmth that we all should deserve.
La película es un drama, como habéis visto, pero por el momento en el que vivimos se convierte en una película muy política, porque habla justamente de todo lo opuesto a los mensajes de odio que vemos en las redes continuamente y a las mentiras llenas de odio, que es una situación que desgraciadamente con la ultraderecha ha aumentado en todo el mundo. Esta película es el testimonio opuesto. Necesitamos lo opuesto para seguir viviendo. Necesitamos de la empatía que tienen Ingrid y John en la película.
Yeah, so that made me lose my thread. No,
Yeah.
no, I got it.
I know it was long.
Yeah. So, even though this is really a human story, right? The problem that film is really trying to deal with is a human story. It becomes a political story in the sense that right now, given the messages of hate that we see online, that we see everywhere, that we see in the middle of our political discourses, it is at this moment that it becomes also a political statement that stands against all of that message of hate.
Y empathy.
And empathy.
I'm going to just ask one more question and then we'll open it up. One thing that really struck me about the film is the degree to which books and movies are just woven into the lives of these women, and in a way that isn't just referential or they're not just citations, but the film overflows with them, and I think it really, in a way that really suggests that art isn't an escape from the world, but a way through the world, and I found that really moving, and I was wondering if you can talk about some of the things that the film references, like James Joyce, Edward Hopper, the list goes on, but I'm just wondering about that choice.
Yeah, I mean, that was not in the novel, but I remember very well the death and John Huston, and I remember a photography of him when he was shooting, and he was with this thing here for the oxygen. He was very ill. And I remember that I thought, I would like to end like him if I could have the same talent, but I didn't mind the illness because it was full of life. So, I thought about the snow like a kind of epiphany and reference that appears 3 times in the movie. And because it was, the last paragraph of James Joyce in Dubliners or The Dead are so moving, talking about the death and the alive people, that I wanted that purity for me, and just to keep it with me. So, and actually, they are the 3 moments that appears. I think they are very, I was very moved all the time. The first, when she's at the hospital. The second one, when Tilda repeats with the actor the words of James Joyce. And at the end, with that kind of transference that the character of Tilda has with Ingrid, that there is, like in persona of Bergman, there is a kind of, it's not the reincarnation, but it's a transference. Ingrid is much stronger at the end, and that strength she inherited from Martha. So Ingrid made her own version of the words of James Joyce related to their experience together. So she talked about falling on the swimming pool, falling on the forest that we walk, and you couldn't, and you. So, and I was extremely touched when just listening to them when they say this. So it was, well, you know, I mean, for me, the cinema is not only something that I do, it's not only something that I see, but it's part of my experience as a spectator. So, I mean, and I talk about my experience. My experience could be everything, but also include the movie. And it's not the first time, but, I mean, she decides to stay a whole night watching movies. You know, I mean, what I mean is that watching movies is also a way to fight against death. And she sees Seven Chances of Keaton, I thought that it was the more funny images that I could show them. They keep on watching Carta de Amor de una Desconocida de Max Ophuls.
Yeah, Letter from an Unknown Woman, Max Ophuls.
Very sad love story. The love story should be sad to be good. At least this is the one that I like and that I love. And also at the end, she's, I mean, really groggy. You told me that we have the dead. And she said, oh yes, I think I can. You wanna see it? Yes. You see the lady want to see, keep on. Yes, it's just. And then I didn't tell them, but after shooting that, I mean, she said the last lines with the actors. So I make mine, the John Huston piece, and then Julianne just look at the window, and that was for me very important to say it. It's dawn, and you are alive. And when I watched that part of then, I had to go to the toilet to cry alone, because this is ridiculous that a director is crying in front of the actors. It's not serious. But I was very moved by them. And so, as I told you, the movies are part of our lives, and that means many things. And in my filmography, they are very important to tell, to not only the name, but sometimes the characters explain themselves, just telling the story of one movie.
Okay, we'll take some questions. Okay. Actually, it's quite hard to see from the stage, so maybe the mic runners just want to go to whoever has hands up. Yes.
I put this question to Julianne Moore. The title of Sigrid Nunez's novel derives from a quote by Simone Weil. The love of one neighbor for another in all its fullness is expressed in, what are you going through? One of my daughters lives downtown in the same neighborhood as you do, and she believes, as I believe you believe, as I know this beautiful film believes, that New Yorkers still care for each other. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Well, I bet I walked by your daughter downtown. I think that, I mean, that's one of the things I loved about Sigrid's book. So much of it was having a conversation with someone, having them open up to you, telling them that, you know, them telling you that their mother was sick, or that they had to change apartments, or that there was something going on with their dog, or, you know, so it literally is like, what are you, you know, tell me what you're going through. And in another case of Pedro's film, and for us, you know, what they're going through is really profound. It's sort of a last stage of life for someone, and it's someone else, you know, being with them and witnessing that. And I think in New York City, that's a constant. If you choose to live here, you're choosing to be among so many people and a population that's so diverse and so interesting, and you're not just with them, you're physically close to them everywhere you go. You know, at Lincoln Center, you're all together like this, or on the subway, we're walking down the street. You have lots of relationships that might seem casual, but they're a daily exchange, you know, and so you do witness each other, you do help each other, you are a constant for one another. It's funny, because when I met Sigrid, I was so, having read that book, I was so convinced I knew where her apartment was. because she talked about living downtown in this one. I said, I know that building. I said, I know what that building is. And she went, oh, no, it's not that building. I don't live there. But because she was so precise in her language and in her characters and sense of place, I really thought that was me. You know, it felt like that was me sitting there next to the person who was talking about losing their mother. And I think back to what you're saying about movies and books too, is that's once again, that's that representation for us. There's another human being there. It's a way to see your life reflected. Yeah, I think New York is like that. And like I said, I bet I passed your daughter on the street.
One of the ways the complicity between the two women shows itself without words is that they dress for each other. And I never noticed it that much in the film before, so I would like you to talk a bit about the costume design and if you were dressing for each other.
Everybody in Pedro's films dress not only for each other, but for Pedro. That's what color's for. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a beautiful point. There's something about the way they give each other shape. It's almost like they are a mirror for each other, but they give each other form. And as Pedro's mentioned, they do affect each other. They do evolve in the nature of their complicity. Ingrid changes. She starts this story terrified of death, and she's asked to do something that's really, really challenging for her. And she finds it, and she even is aware that she finds it. She tells John's character, I'm learning from her. She can feel it moving. And I think that Martha also, who has said that she doesn't want to be alone, she's alone at the end. She finds the courage and she's filled up with the love and the witness of this old, old friend. And there's something about this ancient friendship that I want to mention, because we all, even young people, have old friends. And there's something about having an old friendship that then is interrupted for a couple of decades, finding someone again, and knowing that you can go straight to the important stuff, because all the sort of, what did you do last week, and what about that affair that only lasted for a month? You don't need to even bother about that. You can go really to what's important, what hasn't changed about you. And there's something about this relationship between these two old friends who haven't seen each other for so long that I think is very particular, but at the same time, it's particular on screen. It's very rare that we particularly see a relationship like this between two women on screen. But we do have these relationships, and we also really rely on them. The question of reliance, the three things, this is one of the things that I loved about the screenplay. You asked me what my response was to the screenplay when I first read it. I've always believed that there are three things that will always get you through: art, friendship, and nature. And that's actually the text of this film. What Martha looks for when she's really up against it are those three things. The democracy of nature, that's what's so beautiful about that extract from Joyce, from Houston. The snow is falling on all of us, and it will go on falling on all of us, whatever we do. I think that feeling of, being there for each other. And yes, I'm going to wear that bright green jersey because I think you'll dig it.
I think we only have time for one more question.
I've got a mic here.
Oh, okay.
But my question shouldn't be the last question. Somebody else should ask a question after mine. My question might sound a little critical, so before I ask it, I just want to say how grateful I am for your work and how much I appreciate it. This movie included, and particularly the most recent work. This is kind of a small point, but it still bothered me. Ingrid would have to be incredibly wealthy to have that hospital room, to have that home, and to rent that place. And that's okay, You could make movies about really wealthy people, but it's never acknowledged. It's like as if anyone who was facing this situation could afford to die so beautifully. And I'm wondering if that was a conscious decision on your part to allow her this sort of beautiful death that in New York would cost many millions of dollars.
I think that's a really interesting question, by the way.
You know, there is in movies, there is a different relation between the cost of everything and the profession of the characters. I mean, I don't want to compare myself with Alfred Hitchcock, but when you see Grace Kelly in the Rear Window, I mean, you don't ask her if I mean, she has enough money to have these Givenchy outfits that they are so expensive that it will be more than a month's salary of someone. So the relation with that, I mean, and with the furniture, is not exactly realistic. And it shouldn't be, it's a movie. A movie, it doesn't mean that it's a lie, it's not a lie. They were working all the time, they were successful in their work. So, I mean, at least, you know, the place, it was in Spain. We pretend to be in New England, but we find the right place in Spain. And, well, just to rent that, I don't know, but, I mean, characters of their profession, they can rent that just for a month. It's not to, I mean, to live there, perhaps you need more money. But it's, I mean, I mean, as an spectator, I never ask about if the character has money enough. At least if you are doing a very realistic movie, a naturalistic movie, that everything has to be like in reality, then, because if not, you know, what I made in general in all my movies, it doesn't mean that they are not reals. They are reals. I mean, all the feelings are reals. All the emotions are completely reals. But what I made when I decided to make a movie is a representation of reality. And in all sense, representation of the soul of the story. And, you know, in that level, there, I don't think if that is too, you know, really I never thought about if that was a very expensive place or not.
I think that was an interesting question and an interesting answer, and probably an okay place to end. Yes, if we're all okay with that. Yeah, I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you.